Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about bookish things that have been going on. There are a lot of bookish things going on, and spoiler alert for when we get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video, my reading life is a catastrophic mess at the moment. If I may borrow a phrase from Heidi, mine is sort of a mess right now, but we'll get into all of that. There are a couple of things I want to cover before we get into that, and I'll catch you up on everything that happened when we were at WSU last week. And before I get to that, I want to mention that I am wearing my Protect Trans Kids t-shirt from the Montana Book Company because the day I am filming this is Transgender Day of Visibility, and I wanted to show support for that. So by the time you see this, Transgender Day of Visibility will be over, but I thought it would be really important to wear the shirt right now. And actually, Montana Book Company, my favorite bookstore, is doing a fundraiser today where a portion of their sales will go to organizations that are going to help fight for transgender rights. The things going on in this country right now are kind of scary. As a queer person, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. And most of the scary things are being targeted toward the transgender portion of our community. And I think it's important not just to speak up for my own rights, but to speak up for their rights, because they deserve to be seen, they deserve to be advocated for, they deserve to be respected. And if you have the means and the ability to support anything that will give back to the community and support them, I encourage you to do so. And on that note, I want to mention that this morning I heard about Trans Girl April, which is an initiative that is started by Books and Bow and Say Kevy. And I actually found out about it from Kim at Middle of the Book March. She did a video about what she will be doing for that and People April. And I started thinking about ways that I could participate. I'll have a video from Books and Bow outlining what Trans Girl April is in the description box down below. I would encourage you to check it out. They have some prompts that you can complete. You can do fiction, nonfiction, and you can read a book by a trans female, a trans male, and a non-binary author. And maybe this is when I can finally read Akweke Emeze, because I have been wanting to do that for a long time. I think it's more likely that I will probably read Kaysen Calendar's book, Felix Ever After, because that is on audio, on script. So I will probably be doing that. I am thinking that I'm not going to participate in the whole event because, as I said, my reading life is kind of a mess at the moment, just catastrophic mess. And we'll get into it. But I don't want to make promises or commit to something not knowing if I'm going to be able to follow through. I think maybe giving a nod to it and doing at least that to support transgender literary voices. Hopefully that's something. So again, there will be information in the video from Books and Bow in the description box down below, and I encourage you to check it out. I encourage you to join and do that if you would like. There have been a couple of recommendations. Again, I saw Kim from the Middle of the Book March's thoughts on what she will watch, or read rather. I'll put a video down below so you can watch hers in addition to Books and Bows. I thought I would just throw a book out there that I haven't seen mentioned. It's The Queens of Sarmiento Park by Camila Sosa Villada. This was one of the books we read for LGBTQ in Translation read along last year, and I would recommend it. There is magical realism in here. If that's not your thing, maybe you wouldn't like it. I thought there were aspects of this book that didn't quite work, but overall I did appreciate it, and I have been thinking about it a lot since I read it late last year. And I believe I ordered a copy from the UK, so if you are in the United States and you look for a copy, it won't look like this, and it might even have a different title. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called Bad Girls in the US. I ordered this from the UK because I think that cover is just stunning. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that and put it out there so that if you are going to be participating in Trans Girl April, here is a book you might want to consider for that. And I hope you do. It's a scary world right now for a lot of reasons, and we don't have to dwell on why. You're a person who lives in the world. So let's move to the next big book thing before we get to a bit of a catch up about everything that happened at WSU last week. And this news is that Jhumpa Lahiri has a new story collection coming out. And Jhumpa Lahiri is notable to me particularly, not just because she is a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, but because Interpreter of Maladies is one of my favorite story collections of all time. I've been asked a bunch of times why I am so interested in the Pulitzer Prize, or how I came to be so interested in the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And if you're new here, hi. A lot of new people have joined recently. I am doing a project where I'm reading all of the books that have won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. There are many that I had already read, and this was one of them, but I want to reread it as part of my project at some point. So I think the answer is that the Pulitzer Prize was the first major literary prize that I was aware of as a teenager. And part of that is that I grew up in the United States, and when I was a teenager and a really big reader, I didn't hear people talking about the Booker Prize. And I did hear people talking about the Pulitzer Prize. So it was something that was really known to me. And Interpreter of Maladies comes into that because when I graduated from high school and got a job working at Borders, I remember someone told me about this book. At that time, it had recently been published and recently won. Its Pulitzer win was only a few years old at that point. And I went into work, looked it up, and found this big winner of the Pulitzer Prize sticker on the, it's not a sticker, it's actually on the book. Saw that, and to me it was like, oh, that's a mark of quality, so I can trust this recommendation that this person gave me and pick it up. And I brought it home and I loved it. So to me, it was like a mark of quality. At the time, as an early or young reader, it was something that said to me, oh, this is something that has been certified good. And this is one of the books that got me really interested in that. It's a small book. It is 197 pages. I know short stories are not everybody's thing, but I would recommend this one. And I'm looking forward to rereading it as part of my Pulitzer Prize project because, as I said, it's one of my favorite collections, but I have not reread the whole book since the first time I read it, but I have read the first story, A Temporary Matter, many times. There would be times when I would just open up and read that first story, and it's been a while since I did, so it'll be nice to revisit that. So that's why I'm so obsessed with this news about Jhumpa Lahiri releasing a new story collection. She did do a sort of story collection before with Unaccustomed Earth. I honestly can't remember most of what happened in that book. I remember liking it, but to me, Interpreter Maladies is still the big one that kind of lives in my heart. So this new collection is called Roman Stories. I love the cover. And Jhumpa Lahiri has really, I believe she lives in Italy now, and she has become a big proponent of the Italian language. She wrote her last book in Italian and then translated it into English herself. So she's doing the same thing with Roman Stories. She wrote them in Italian and then she has translated them into English with the help of Todd Portnowitz. So she's doing that approach again, and I love this cover. So I believe these are trees that Joel and I saw a lot in Italy when we were there. I don't know if you remember, but we went to Italy last year and I've been smug about it ever since. But we loved these trees. So not only is it an interesting design, it also happens to be something that I saw a lot in Italy and just loved. Anyway, here is the description of this book online. Rome, metropolis and monument, suspended between past and future, multifaceted and metaphysical, is the protagonist, not the setting, of these 9 stories, the first short story collection by the Pulitzer Prize-winning master of the form since her #1 New York Times bestseller Unaccustomed Earth, and a major literary event. In The Boundary, one family vacations in the Roman countryside, though we see their lives through the eyes of the caretaker's daughter, who nurses a wound from her family's immigrant past. In Pea's Parties, a Roman couple, now empty nesters, finds comfort and community with foreigners at their friend's early birthday gathering, until the husband crosses a line. And in The Steps, on a public staircase that connects 2 neighborhoods and the residents who climb up and down it, we see Italy's capital in all of its social and cultural variegations, filled with the tensions of a changing city, visibility and invisibility, random acts of aggression, and the challenge of straddling worlds and cultures, and the meaning of home. These are splendid searching stories written in Jhumpa Lahiri's adopted language of Italian and seamlessly translated by the author and by Knopf editor Todd Portnowitz, stories steeped in the moods of Italian master Alberto Moravia and guided in the concluding tale by the ineluctable ghost of Dante Alighieri, whose words lead the protagonist toward a new way of life. all of that sounds fascinating. And I haven't really talked about this, but my mother is first generation American. Her family had immigrated, both of her parents immigrated from Italy, and she has been back to Italy many times. My mother is a very conservative person, and one of the things that this book touches on, the idea of a changing city and visibility and invisibility, is something my mother has been very concerned about in a bad way. So I actually will embrace hearing Jhumpa Lahiri's take on this. I think that's going to be really fascinating. And this will be released on October 10th, 2023. I'm going to have a link to the bookshop.org page for this book in the description box down below. If you'd like to pre-order it there or at your local independent bookstore, I would encourage you to do it there and support one of those stores. Bookshop.org supports independent bookstores and is a good alternative to Amazon. So that covers everything that's happened in the book world. A lot, actually, a lot. The only other thing I would like to say is just, again, thank you for all of the response to my Pulitzer Prize predictions for 2023. It's been really fun seeing the comments and thoughts that have been coming in. There was a comment from James Hannahan, who's the author of Didn't Nobody Give a Shoot What Happened to Carlotta, which really made me happy. Anyway, the video will be linked down below if you haven't seen it already, but I am obsessed with the Pulitzer, as I mentioned, so it's been fun getting the feedback and hearing what other people have been excited about from the last year and what they think will win, because it's all speculation and we won't know what happens until May 8th. The other thing is just catch up on what happened at WSU. So we were there for Jamie, my dog, who has a nasal tumor, and everything went well, as well as can be expected in that circumstance. Her labs and vitals were doing great. She's really healthy, other than the nasal tumor, which is a big but still, she's doing really well. And because of her age and her heart condition, they weren't sure she would be a good candidate for radiation. But she is so healthy that they feel that she will be a good candidate for it. And she did really well with the sedation for the CT. So radiation is the recommended treatment. So and part of the reason I'm saying this is because everybody is so kind and supportive and on this journey, I guess, with me. And I really do appreciate that, but also because there are potential impacts for my channel over the next 2 weeks. We're not going to be home for 2 weeks. We leave over the weekend and we'll be back there so she can get this treatment. It's basically the best option we have to get her good quality of life back. So we're going to do it. But what does that mean? Yesterday, I managed to film a video that I'm going to edit while we're gone, and we'll post on the channel. I'm going to try to film another video today and another video tomorrow that I can also get posted while we're gone. We'll see how that goes. But we're going to be living out of a hotel room, and it's going to be interesting. Both Joel and I are going to be working out of the hotel room for work. We're going to have Jamie with us. She, by the way, is asleep in her little bed right here. I'll put in some video of her in it right now so you can see it and enjoy it. She is being really sweet. And actually, I've moved back to the living room so I could sit with her during the day, but she's been so good sitting here with me that I'm kind of wondering if I can move back to the desk. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, so I don't know if I'll be able to film a Friday Reads video while we're gone. I'm figuring out ways that I can produce content because I don't want to have to film in a hotel room when we're both working out of it and all of that stuff. And there will be a lot of other things going on. If I can do a Friday Reads video, I will. But just so you know, there's a likelihood that at least next week, actually, I might be able to do one next week. We'll find out. The following week may actually be the even dicier one because that will be the last day of radiation and we'll be getting ready to come home. So that might be even more difficult to film a video. So just FYI, I don't know if there will be a Friday Reads for the next 2 weeks. And I really won't know until we get to the day where I would be filming. So I will keep you updated on the community tab if there is not going to be one. But just FYI. And again, I really appreciate all the love and the support and the people who are really invested and people who have shared tough things they're going through with their dog right now. You know, Guinness and Jamie are my children, and that's the way it is. And, you know, you have to do what's best for your kids and do what you can for them. So that's what we're going to do. So thank you for the support and all of the understanding and all of that. And as such, I'm sure you can understand my reading. My reading has been a mess, just a mess. I did manage to read a book before we left, and I mentioned it in my last Friday Reads, but it was such a short Friday Reads video that I didn't actually talk about it, and that is 84 Charing Cross Road. So I have something I could talk about. I do have another book that I can talk about that I finished. But really, 84 Charing Cross Road is the one that's most interesting. So I got this from the library. Joel read it last year and loved it. And then we watched the movie with Anthony Hopkins and Anne Bancroft in January, and I loved the movie. And I really want to get myself a copy of this book because I loved it that much. And I read this in a single afternoon. So basically, I was talking with Erica from The Broken Spine this week. And we were talking about how I haven't really been able to read this week. And she was asking, well, what are you able to read? Well, this, because it's a collection of letters that were sent. So I read this in a single afternoon. I think 2 hours and I was done. So that is one path toward getting me to read that worked pretty well. If this had been a longer book, who knows? But I think this definitely would have, because of the form. It's letters going back and forth. Starting in 1949, I believe. Maybe 1948. Let's double check. Yeah, the first letter is October 5th, 1949. And the last letter is dated, let's see, January 8th, 1969. So the letters span 20 years in this tiny little volume. And basically, the author of the book, Helene Hanff, found out about a bookstore in the UK called Marsh & Co. And it starts with her ordering books that could be sent to her because she was a very literary person, but had a limited budget and wasn't able to find the books that she was interested in the United States. So she would send them lists of books that she was interested in, and if they had copies, they would send them to her. And then over the course of letters and years, there developed a very strong friendship between her and the people in the store, particularly FPD, Frank Dole, who was the person who responded to her letters for the most part. Other people kind of jumped in and out here and there or would send her letters on the side through the years, and those are in the book as well. And part of that is just the sense of generosity that comes from Helen Hanff. Like she, you know, you have as a business person, and I guess British people have a reputation for being very, very proper. You're very professional. And she was like a typical New Yorker who didn't really stand for proper. So she would make jokes and endearments, and then she would send gifts. She found out about restrictions that were existing after the war and how meat and eggs, for example, were rationed and people didn't have access to them. And she found a service where you can have items shipped. So as a Christmas present, she sent a package to them. And it just became this really profound friendship that changed probably all of their lives. And it's about that and about a love of literature. There's a passage in here where she talks about how she loves used books because she loves the history of it and finding markings that someone left behind and ways in which maybe a book falls open to a particular page or passage, and you can see what part of a book had an impact on someone in the past. And I used to not like used books at all, but and she articulated something that I've kind of feeling like there's a sense of history in a used book. So I want to buy a copy of this book, but I want to hold to that spirit of what she said and find a used copy of it. I think that will be very poetic and appropriate for it. Unfortunately, my local used bookstore does not have any, so I'm going to keep, and there is actually a used bookstore in Pullman. So I'm going to have to drop in there while we're back in town and see if they have a copy, because I definitely want a copy of this for my library, and I think a used one will be very appropriate for it. So I loved this book. Definitely loved it. It is a quick read. I would absolutely recommend it. It's just so... It's sweet. It's endearing. It's about people who in difficult circumstances, and just her desire to get to London over the years, and the things that get in the way. Like, part of why I'm very smug about Joel and I going to Italy is that we wanted to go to Italy for like a decade, and things kept getting in the way. So that part of her story about how she wanted to get to London, she wanted to go to this store, and she wanted to see all of these things, it really resonated with me. It's great. I loved it. Really fantastic book. Highly recommend it. So I did manage to read something this past weekend after we got home. And so Erica, again, had asked me, well, what are you managing to read right now? And something really quick and kind of easy to get through, for sure. And then I said, or something short, relatively easy to get through, that also irritates me enough that it pulls me through almost like a hate read, but not aggressively enough that I have to stop or throw the book across the room. So I read The Nursing Home Murder by Ngaio Marsh. And this is also a short book. I read it across, I think I started it on Saturday. It's 235 pages. I started it on Saturday and finished it on Sunday. And so if you may remember, I started reading Ngaio Marsh's books in December. I read another one in January. And this is, I believe, the third in the series about Detective Inspector Allen. I always get confused about the difference in language for American detectives and British detectives. This is the third in the series. In this, the Home Secretary for the government undergoes surgery and dies shortly after the surgery is complete. And, of course, everyone in the operating room is a suspect. He was introducing a bill that was supposed to fight socialist, they called them anarchists, but it's specifically a socialist party in the country. And they had expected violent backlash to that from the anarchists. And of course, some people in the operating room turn out to have ties to anarchist organizations. He had also had an affair with a nurse in the hospital, and they had a mad, passionate weekend, and then he blew her off, and she kind of went fatal attraction on him. And it turns out one of the surgeons at the hospital, the surgeon who performed the operation, was in love with her and had threatened the Home Secretary. So those are the, like, everyone's a suspect type things. Another suspect in the book is into eugenics, which is like, it's a lot. That's the thing about this book that was really irritating me. So this was published, I believe, in 1936. It was published before World War II. So on the one hand, you really do want to... They don't have the original copyright in the book. They have 1963, but that's this edition. I believe it was published in 1936 for the first time. So World War II and all of the awful things that it was revealed that were being done during World War II really snapped back the science of eugenics, which had been kind of around in the early 1900s. So that obviously hadn't happened yet when this was written. However, it's almost treated with a degree of sympathy that people could have known better at the time. That's all I'm going to say. Because the detective kind of sympathizes with some of the ideas, but then we'll say, but he's a little fanatical about it. It's like, there's a point to everything he says, but he takes it a little fanatically. And it's like, is there a point to what he's saying? No, there isn't. No. So I was able to read that. And I will also say there's something kind of irritating about the way Ngaio Marsh structures her mysteries. I was really pleased that this was the first one that didn't have a character who's sort of like a Watson to Detective Allen. He's a journalist, and he was a suspect in the first mystery who was really quickly cleared and sort of became Inspector Allen's right-hand man in the course of the investigation. And then he was integral to the second mystery as well, which felt surprising because why is he back? Why is he he's a journalist, and they're working together. It doesn't really make sense. But you kind of have to go with it. So I was relieved that he wasn't in this book, and then he was, and yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series, but we'll see. I managed to read it, so that's something, I guess. And I have not made any progress on The Grapes of Wrath in a while. I did Charing Cross Road and Nursing Home Murder, trying to jolt myself back to reading physical books, and it's only had muted success. I have not read anything all week. I've also been working on the audio for If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery, and I have been having a bit of a problem paying attention, so I have really not made any progress with that. I think I am maybe 20% of the way into the audio, and that's it. And I'm really enjoying it. It's not the book. Like, I was loving The Grapes of Wrath. I'm loving If I Survive You. It's me. It's the, combination, stress, anxiety, all of that stuff is just making it difficult to read right now. So for me to read, it's got to be something really short and engaging, or short and infuriating, which is the one that's on the floor right now. And that's been difficult. I will get back to If I Survive You, and that's why I'm hesitant to jump into committing to Trans Girl April and saying I'll do all of the prompts and things like that. I think I really need to get over this hump, and I don't know when that's going to happen. Sometimes you have to let these things ride out. So we'll see. We shall see. But I will leave it there for today, and again, just say thank you for all the support and compassion, and again, heads up, I don't know if there will be a Friday Reads next week. I don't know if there will be a Friday Reads the week after that. I will have content that will be on the channel in the meantime, but I don't want to have to film out of the hotel room. Maybe it'll be easier than I think it will be, but I'm going to assume that it won't be. So again, I will leave it at that. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.